Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars drift past the viewport. His ship had been exploring deep space for 6 months now, charting systems that no human had ever seen before. It was quiet work, sometimes boring, but Jake loved it. Out here, away from Earth's crowded cities and political games, he felt free. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Amy Rodriguez called from her station. She was the ship's science officer, and she had good instincts. When Amy said something was strange, Jake paid attention. "What kind of strange?" Jake asked, walking over to her console. "Energy signatures, big ones, and they're not natural." Amy's fingers moved across her screen, pulling up data. "Captain, I think we've found someone." Jake felt his heart skip. Humanity had been searching for alien life for centuries. They had found bacteria on Mars, some interesting chemistry on Europa's ocean floor, but never anything intelligent. Never anyone who could talk back. "Battle stations," Jake ordered. His crew moved quickly. Brandon Cole, the chief engineer, started running diagnostics on their weapon systems. Lisa Henderson, who handled navigation, calculated escape routes just in case. They were explorers, yes, but they were not stupid. The alien ships appeared on their sensors. There were 5 of them, each one 3 times the size of the horizon's edge. They had smooth, curved hulls that seemed to shimmer with energy. Human ships looked clunky and primitive by comparison, all hard angles and visible armor plating. "They're hailing us," Amy said. She sounded nervous. Jake didn't blame her. "Put them through," Jake replied, straightening his uniform. The view screen flickered and an alien face appeared. Jake tried not to stare. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. Its skin was a deep purple color, and it had no visible nose or ears. When it spoke, the words came through a translator that made its voice sound mechanical and cold. "Primitive vessel, identify yourself," the alien said. There was no greeting, no curiosity in its tone. Just command. Jake felt a flash of anger but kept his voice calm. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace. We represent Earth and all humanity." The alien's eyes blinked in sequence, one after another. "Humanity. We have no records of this species. You are not registered with the Galactic Collective." The alien paused, and Jake could have sworn it looked disappointed. "How unfortunate for you. We've only just reached this far into space," Jake explained. "This is our first contact with another intelligent species. We'd like to open diplomatic relations." The alien made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret properly. It came through as static. "I am Commander Vekris of the Torvan Collective. Your species is unknown to us, which means you are primitives. Your ship confirms this assessment. Chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons, biological crew with no neural enhancement. You rank below even the Farathi, and they are considered barely sentient." Amy gasped at her station. Jake clenched his fists but forced himself to stay calm. "We may be new to this, but we're intelligent. We've built cities, explored our solar system, created art and music and literature. We deserve respect." Vekris tilted its head in a way that reminded Jake of a bird examining an insect. "Respect is earned through capability. Your species lacks the 3 primary markers of galactic citizenship. Your neural processing is purely biological, laughably slow. Your energy manipulation is primitive. And most critically, you have 0 void resistance capability." "Void resistance?" Jake asked. "What does that mean?" "It is not your concern," Vekris said dismissively. "You are fortunate that your system lies far from the deep reaches. You will likely never need to understand." The alien leaned forward. "I will grant you basic information about the galaxy as a courtesy. You are surrounded by thousands of intelligent species. Some are friendly. Most are not. You are currently in Torvan territory, and we claim this entire region. You have 2 options: accept client species status under Torvan protection, or leave and try your luck with others who will be far less generous." "Client species status?" Jake asked. "What does that mean?" "You will serve Torvan interests," Vekris explained. "You will provide resources, labor, and compliance. In exchange, we will not destroy you, and we will protect you from other species who would exploit you worse. It is the standard arrangement for primitives." Jake felt his crew watching him. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people back home who were counting on him to represent them well. He thought about his daughter, Sarah, who was 7 years old and wanted to be an explorer like her father. What kind of galaxy did he want her to inherit? One where humans bowed to anyone with bigger ships? "No," Jake said firmly. Humanity will not be anyone's servants. We'll make our own way in the galaxy. Vakris stared at him for a long moment. Then it made that static sound again. Maybe it was laughter. Foolish. But it is your choice to make. I will transmit basic galactic charts to your primitive computer systems. I will also give you a communication beacon so you can contact the Galactic Assembly if you change your mind. But know this, Captain Morrison. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Species far older and stronger than the Torvins exist out here. They will not be as patient with your pride. We'll take our chances, Jake said. One more thing, Vakris added, and for the first time, something like real emotion crossed its alien face. Concern, maybe? Or was it fear? Your ignorance may actually be your salvation. When the void stirs again, as the ancient predictions say it will, your species will likely be overlooked. You are too small, too far away, too insignificant. Perhaps that is better than the alternative. Before Jake could ask what that meant, the communication cut off. The Torvin ships moved away, accelerating to speeds the horizon's edge couldn't match. Within minutes they were gone, leaving humanity alone with more questions than answers. Jake returned to Earth 3 weeks later. He stood before the United Earth Space Command Council and gave his report. Admiral Gregory Patterson listened carefully, his weathered face showing no emotion. When Jake finished, the room erupted in argument. We should accept their offer, said Catherine Wells, Earth's top diplomat. We need protection. We need to learn from them. We need nothing from aliens who treat us like animals, General Vincent Hayes countered. He was a hard man, a veteran of Earth's last major war. We should build our military, make ourselves strong enough that no one can push us around. The argument went on for hours. Finally, Admiral Patterson raised his hand for silence. We will maintain our independence, he said. But we will also be smart about this. We'll establish contact with this galactic assembly. We'll learn what we can, and we'll prepare for whatever comes next. Jake left the meeting feeling uneasy. Vakris's warning about the void kept replaying in his mind. What had the alien meant? What was humanity too ignorant to understand? He looked up at the stars through the window and wondered what other secrets the galaxy was hiding. He had a feeling humanity was about to find out, whether they were ready or not. The galaxy was afraid. Jake Morrison could see it in the way alien ships moved through space now, traveling in tight formations, always ready to jump to faster-than-light speeds at the first sign of trouble. He stood on the bridge of his new command, the battleship Terra's Defiance, watching the sensor displays with growing unease. Admiral Patterson had promoted him after first contact with the Torvins. Now Jake commanded Earth's most advanced warship, though he knew it was still primitive compared to what the other species had. His crew was the same group he trusted from the horizon's edge. Amy Rodriguez sat at the science station. Brandon Cole monitored the engineering systems, and Lisa Henderson handled navigation. Admiral Patterson is hailing us, Amy announced. The Admiral's face appeared on the view screen. He looked tired with dark circles under his eyes. Captain Morrison, I'm sending you to Sector 447. The Torvins have detected the first rift opening there. I need you to observe and report. Stay at maximum safe distance. Do not engage. Understood, sir, Jake replied. What exactly are we looking for? I wish I knew, Patterson admitted. The aliens aren't sharing much information. All I know is that this void thing scares them more than anything else in the galaxy. If species that have lived for thousands of years are afraid, we should be too. The Terra's Defiance arrived at Sector 447 3 days later. Jake positioned his ship at the edge of the system, far from where the rift was forming. They were not alone. Dozens of alien warships floated in space nearby, all keeping their distance. The Torvin fleet was there, including Vakris's flagship. So were the Kelthrans, the Zerathi, and half a dozen other species Jake didn't recognize. Captain, the rift is opening, Amy said, her voice tight with tension. Jake watched as space itself seemed to tear apart. It started as a small distortion, barely visible like heat waves rising from summer pavement. Then it grew, spreading like a crack in glass. Reality bent around it. Colors appeared that Jake couldn't name, shades that didn't exist in normal space. Looking at it made his eyes hurt and his stomach twist. I'm getting strange readings, Brandon called from engineering. Energy patterns that don't match anything in our database. Temperature fluctuations that shouldn't be possible. Captain, this thing is breaking the laws of physics. Something came through the rift. Jake had seen a lot of strange things in space, but nothing prepared him for this. The creature was wrong in every way. Its shape kept changing. shifting between forms that made no sense. One moment it looked almost spherical, the next it stretched into impossible geometries. Sometimes Jake could see it clearly, sometimes it seemed to fade in and out of existence, and worst of all, looking at it felt like having his brain squeezed by invisible hands. More creatures emerged. Dozens of them, then hundreds, pouring through the rift like water through a broken dam. The alien fleets opened fire immediately. Energy beams from Torvan ships blazed across space. Kinetic projectiles from Zerathi railguns streaked toward the creatures. Kelthran vessels launched weapons that bent space itself. Nothing worked. The energy beams passed through the creatures like they weren't even there. The projectiles hit and caused minor damage at best. The space-bending weapons had some effect, but not enough. And then the creatures struck back. Jake watched in horror as alien ships went dark. No explosions, no damage to their hulls. They just stopped. Their engines cut out, their weapons fell silent, their lights flickered and died. It was like someone had flipped a switch and turned them off. "What's happening to them?" Lisa asked, her hands gripping her console. Amy was scanning the disabled ships. "I'm detecting life signs, but they're wrong. Neural activity is minimal. It's like everyone on those ships is unconscious or worse. Captain, these things are attacking their minds directly." The battle turned into a massacre. Ship after ship fell silent. The aliens tried to retreat, but the void creatures were fast, impossibly fast. They moved through space in ways that ignored momentum and acceleration. One moment they were far away. The next they were right on top of their target. "We need to get out of here," Brandon said urgently. "We can't help them and we'll be next." But Jake was watching his sensors carefully. Something strange was happening. The void creatures were ignoring the Terra's defiance. They were attacking the alien ship systematically, moving from one to the next. But they hadn't come near the human vessel. "Why?" "Amy, focus all our sensors on the disabled ships," Jake ordered. "I need to understand what these things are doing." Amy worked quickly. "The void creatures are projecting some kind of energy field. It's not electromagnetic, not gravitational. It's something else, something our sensors barely register. But when it hits a ship, all neural activity on board crashes. The alien crews have cybernetic implants in their brains. I think the void creatures are targeting those implants specifically." Jake felt something click in his mind. "And we don't have implants. Our brains are completely organic." "That's right," Amy said slowly, understanding dawning on her face. "Captain, we might be invisible to them, or at least we might not be their primary target." "Test it," Jake decided. "Lisa, take us closer. Slow and steady." "Are you insane?" Brandon shouted. "We just watched those things destroy 50 ships in 10 minutes. "Trust me," Jake said with more confidence than he felt. "If I'm wrong, we'll jump to FTL immediately. But I need to know if I'm right." Lisa guided the Terra's defiance toward the battle. Every person on the bridge was tense, ready to run at the first sign of danger. They passed within a kilometer of a void creature. Jake felt a pressure building in his skull like the worst headache of his life. His vision blurred. Nausea washed over him. But he stayed conscious. They all did. "It's working," Amy gasped, one hand pressed to her temple. "It hurts, but we're not shutting down like the aliens are. Our organic brains are resisting somehow." A Torvan ship exploded nearby as its reactor overloaded. The blast nearly hit the Terra's defiance. Lisa pulled them away quickly, but Jake had seen enough. He opened a channel to Admiral Patterson and to the Galactic Council simultaneously. His head was pounding, but he forced himself to speak clearly. "This is Captain Jake Morrison to all commands. The void creatures target cybernetic neural systems. Human organic brains provide partial resistance. We can get closer to these things than anyone else can. This is not a guarantee of survival, but it's an advantage we can use." There was silence on the other end of the transmission. Then Admiral Patterson spoke. "Are you certain about this, Captain?" "Yes, sir. We need to get this information to everyone immediately." On the Galactic Council, Jake could see alien leaders looking at each other in shock. Vakris appeared on his screen, the Torvan's 4 eyes wide with something that might have been respect or might have been disbelief. "This is impossible," Vakris said. "How can a primitive species resist what breaks our most advanced defenses?" "Because we're not advanced," Jake replied, his headache making him blunt. "Our brains are messy and biological and irrational. Apparently, that's exactly what we need right now." Dr. Laura Bennett was pulled into an emergency research committee alongside Dorath and the galaxy's top scientists. They had to understand why humans were resistant and fast. Laura worked for 36 hours straight, analyzing brain scans and neural patterns. The void creatures lock onto structured, predictable patterns, she explained to the committee. Cybernetic implants create regular rhythms and organized data flows. It's like a signal they can easily target. But human brains are chaotic, so emotions, random thoughts, unconscious processes, all of it creates noise. The creatures can still affect us, but they can't completely overwhelm us like they do with cybernetic systems. Dorath looked at Laura with his glowing blue eyes. We spent thousands of cycles making ourselves more efficient, more logical, more organized. And in doing so, we made ourselves vulnerable to this specific threat. Evolution doesn't care about efficiency, Laura said. It cares about survival. Sometimes messy and chaotic is exactly what you need. Back at Sector 447, the situation was desperate. The Kelthran homeworld was under attack. Dorath's people were making their last stand, but they were losing. Their shields were failing, their fleets were destroyed. Jake watched helplessly from a distance as ship after ship went dark. Then Dorath sent a final transmission. His image appeared on the view screen, and Jake could see that the old Kelthran was in pain. The void creatures were affecting him even through his ship's shields. Captain Morrison, Dorath said, his voice weak. Tell Ryan Chen that I was honored to call a human friend. Tell him that you were not expected by the galaxy, but perhaps that is your strength. We thought chaos was weakness. We were wrong. He paused, struggling to speak. Survive, Jake Morrison. Show the galaxy that the unexpected can triumph over the inevitable. The transmission ended. The Kelthran homeworld's energy signature vanished from the sensors. An entire civilization, one of the galaxy's oldest and wisest, was gone. Jake felt tears on his face and didn't bother to wipe them away. Around him, his crew was silent, sharing in the grief of watching billions die. But Jake also felt something else. Determination. Anger. Dorath had believed humanity could survive this. Jake was going to prove him right. 5 years passed since humanity's first contact with the Torvins. Those years were not kind to human pride. Ryan Chen, Earth's first official ambassador to the Galactic Assembly, had experienced more rejection and mockery than he ever thought possible. He stood now on the observation deck of Cathera Prime, the massive space station that served as the galaxy's political center, watching alien ships come and go. Another productive day of being ignored? Asked a voice behind him. Ryan turned to see Dorath, one of the few aliens who actually treated him with respect. Dorath belonged to the Kelthran species, an ancient race that had been exploring space when humans were still living in caves. He had gray skin that looked like weathered stone, and eyes that glowed faintly blue. The Zerathi delegation walked past me like I was furniture, Ryan said with a tired smile. The Farathi actually laughed when I tried to speak. And the Torvins, well, Fekris made sure everyone knows humanity tried to claim equal status with species that have been spacefaring for thousands of years. Dorath settled his large frame into a seat designed for his species. The galaxy has always been cruel to newcomers. When my people first ventured beyond our world, we were mocked too. Of course, that was 15,000 cycles ago, so the memory has faded. Ryan sat down next to him. Over the past few years, Dorath had become something like a friend. The old Kelthran seemed to enjoy talking to humans, finding their perspective fresh and interesting. Tell me something, Dorath. What did Vekris mean about the void? Every time I ask about it, aliens either change the subject or tell me it's not my concern. Dorath's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. That was his species' equivalent of a frown. You are persistent. That is very human of you. He was quiet for a moment, then sighed. Very well. You should know. If the predictions are correct, your species may face it soon enough. Face what? Ryan leaned forward. Every 7,000 cycles, rifts open in the deep reaches, Dorath began. His voice was heavy with old pain. We call it the void. Entities come through from another dimension, something beyond our reality. They consume everything they touch. Entire star systems disappear. Billions die. The last void incursion happened 6,800 cycles ago. My species lost half our population. Dozens of other species went completely extinct. Ryan felt cold. And it's going to happen again? The mathematics suggest it will happen within the next few hundred cycles, Dorath said. Maybe sooner. Maybe later. The universe does not keep precise schedules. But yes, it will happen again. It always does. How do you fight something like that? Ryan asked. With great difficulty, Dorath replied. The void entities are partially incorporeal. They exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Physical weapons barely affect them. Energy weapons are useless. The only defense is mental shielding, powered by cybernetic neural processors. Most species long ago replaced their biological brains with synthetic ones. It was necessary for survival. Ryan understood now. And humans still have biological brains. That's why everyone thinks we're doomed. Yes, Dorath said simply. When the void comes, the entities target minds. They project psychic attacks that shut down neural functions. With proper shielding, we can resist, but your organic brains have no such protection. You would be the first to fall, Ryan. Your entire species would likely be consumed before the rest of us could mount a proper defense. Ryan stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, something terrible was waiting to emerge and destroy everything, and humanity, barely beginning to explore the galaxy, was completely unprepared. Is there any hope for us? There is always hope, Dorath said, but he didn't sound convinced. Perhaps the void will not emerge in your lifetime. Perhaps your species will develop the necessary technology in time. Or perhaps you will find another way. Humans are creative, from what I have seen. You solve problems differently than we do. Back on Earth, other humans were working to prove humanity's worth through different means. Commander Tyler Brooks led a team of human soldiers training with alien forces. The joint military exercises were supposed to build cooperation, but mostly they showed how far behind humanity really was. Tyler watched as a Torvan squad cleared a training facility in 30 seconds, moving with perfect precision. Their enhanced reflexes and networked neural systems allowed them to coordinate without speaking. They knew what each other was thinking before they thought it. When it was Tyler's team's turn, things went differently. His soldiers were slower, more cautious. They had to actually communicate with words and hand signals, but they also did something the Torvans didn't expect. They cheated. The facility has an air circulation system, Tyler had noticed during the briefing. If we pump knockout gas through it, we don't need to clear the rooms the hard way. The Torvan instructor had been confused by this. That is not the proper tactical approach. But it works, Tyler pointed out. And it did. His team completed the exercise in 25 seconds, faster than the Torvans. The alien instructor was not impressed. You did not follow protocol. In real combat, you would not have access to such convenient systems. In real combat, I'd look for every advantage I could find, Tyler replied. Protocol is just someone else's idea of how things should be done. Sometimes the best plan is the one nobody expects. The Torvans didn't understand this human way of thinking. Everything in their military doctrine was about efficiency and predictable patterns. Humans, on the other hand, seemed to enjoy being unpredictable. It made them frustrating to work with, but occasionally, just occasionally, it made them surprisingly effective. Meanwhile, Dr. Laura Bennett worked in a research facility on Cathara Prime, alongside alien scientists. She was studying dimensional physics, trying to understand the theoretical basis of the void. Most of her colleagues treated her like a child playing with adult tools. But Laura was stubborn. This equation doesn't balance, she pointed out to her supervisor, a Zerathi named Kessex. You're assuming the dimensional membrane is uniform, but what if it has weak points? Kessex waved a manipulator appendage dismissively. The calculations have been verified by thousands of scientists over thousands of cycles. Perhaps your primitive mathematics skills are insufficient to understand. Laura bit back an angry response. She ran the numbers again on her own, late into the station's night cycle, and she found something. The equation did balance, but only if you assumed certain constants that had never been properly tested. What if those constants were wrong? What if the dimensional membrane wasn't uniform at all? She couldn't prove it yet. She didn't have the equipment or the authority to conduct the necessary experiments. But the idea nagged at her. Sometimes being an outsider meant seeing things that insiders missed. Sometimes ignorance was a kind of freedom. Back on his observation deck, Ryan received an urgent message. All ambassadors were being summoned to an emergency session of the Council of Archons. That had never happened before, not in the 5 years he'd been here. Dorath appeared next to him, his face grim. It has begun, the old Kelthran said quietly. What has? Ryan asked, though he already knew the answer. The void, Dorath replied. The detection stations in the deep reaches are registering gravitational anomalies. The rifts are forming. We thought we had more time. We were wrong. Ryan felt the weight of what this meant settle on him. Humanity had barely learned to walk among the stars, and now they would face a threat that had destroyed countless civilizations before them. Every species in the galaxy would be fighting for survival. And humans with their primitive ships and unprotected minds would be the first to die, unless they found a way to survive that no one expected. Unless being the galaxy's outcasts and primitives somehow became an advantage instead of a weakness. It seemed impossible. But then again, humans had always been good at doing the impossible when they had no other choice. The Council of Archons met an emergency session for the third time in 2 weeks. Ryan Chen stood among beings who represented civilizations millions of years old, and for the first time since arriving at Cathera Prime, they were actually listening to him. Fear had a way of breaking down old prejudices. 73 worlds have gone dark, announced the council leader, a towering being called Archon Prime. Its species had no name that humans could pronounce. Billions are dead. Our fleets are decimated. And the main rift at the galactic core continues to grow. If it fully opens, we estimate complete galactic extinction within 1 standard cycle. The chamber fell silent. Species that had survived countless wars and disasters now faced their end. Ryan looked around at the assembled representatives and saw despair on faces both familiar and alien. "We have no choice," Vekris spoke up. The Torvan commander looked different now, less arrogant, more desperate. "We must request assistance from the only species that has shown resistance to the void. We must ask humanity for help." Several aliens objected immediately. The idea of asking primitives for help was humiliating, but Archon Prime raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. Ambassador Chen, what does your species require?" Ryan had been preparing for this moment. "Weapons, ships, technology. Our soldiers can resist the Void's mental attacks better than yours, but we don't have the firepower to fight back effectively. Give us your best equipment and let human crews operate it. We'll lead the counterattack." "Impossible," someone objected. "Your people lack the training to operate our systems." "Then train us fast," Ryan said firmly. "Or watch the galaxy die while you argue about proper procedures. Your choice." Admiral Patterson stood in the command center on Earth, coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. Volunteers were flooding recruitment centers. Everyone wanted to help, wanted to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. General Vincent Hayes entered the room, his expression grim but determined. "We have 50,000 volunteers already," Hayes reported. "More coming every hour." "But Patterson, most of these people have never been in combat. We're sending kids and civilians against entities that destroyed advanced alien militaries." "I know," Patterson replied quietly. "But they're brave kids and civilians. And right now, bravery is the most valuable resource we have." Commander Tyler Brooks found himself in command of a Torvan dreadnought, renamed Freedom's Resolve. The ship was 10 times larger than anything humans had built, with weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand supernovas. The Torvan crew that remained on board looked at him with barely concealed doubt. "I know you don't trust me," Tyler told them during his first briefing. "You think humans are primitive and reckless. You're right, we are. But that's going to save all of us." He pulled up tactical displays. "Your species fights with precision and logic. You have protocols for everything. The void creatures have learned to predict your moves. They know how you'll respond because you always respond the same way. But humans, we don't follow protocols when they don't work. We improvise, we cheat, we do whatever it takes to win." A Torvan officer spoke up. "And if your improvisation gets us all killed, then we'll die doing something unexpected," Tyler replied with a grim smile. "Better than dying by the book." Jake Morrison received command of a Kelthran supercarrier called Last Light, a ship so massive it carried its own fleet of smaller vessels. Standing on its bridge felt surreal. The Kelthrans who served alongside him moved with quiet efficiency, still grieving their lost home world but determined to fight on. "Dorath would have liked you, Captain Morrison," said one of the Kelthran officers, her stone-like skin marked with scars from decades of service. "He believed your species had potential. Let us prove him right." The combined fleet assembled at a system called the Threshold. It was the last major defensive position before the galactic core, where the largest void rift was tearing reality apart. Every species had sent what ships they could spare. The fleet numbered in the thousands, but everyone knew it might not be enough. The void creatures came in waves. They poured through smaller rifts scattered across the system, converging on the defensive line. The battle began with a coordinated strike that would have been impossible weeks ago. Alien and human ships working together, combining their strengths, covering each other's weaknesses. Tyler Brooks proved why human tactics were effective. He split his formation in ways that violated every rule of Torvan naval doctrine. He used feints and false retreats to draw void creatures into kill zones. When the enemy adapted to his patterns, he changed them completely. The Torvans on his ship were horrified by his methods but couldn't argue with the results. Enemy formation approaching from heading 27 Mark 5, his sensor officer reported. Good, Tyler replied. Let them think we're retreating. All ships fall back toward the asteroid field. Make it look panicked and disorganized. Sir, that field is full of debris. Navigation will be difficult. Exactly, Tyler grinned. For them too. And when they follow us in, we'll show them what happens when you corner a human. The void creatures chased the retreating ships into the asteroid field. Then Tyler sprang his trap. Hidden human fighters launched from behind the asteroids, hitting the creatures from multiple directions. It was chaotic and messy and completely unpredictable. Several void creatures were destroyed before they could adapt. Lisa Henderson commanded a destroyer in the outer defensive ring. When a void creature tore through her ship's hull, she made a decision that would have gotten her court-martialed in peacetime. She ordered all crew to escape pods, then set the ship on a collision course with a cluster of void creatures and manually detonated the reactor. The explosion destroyed a dozen entities and gave the defensive line time to reorganize. Lisa's escape pod was picked up by a Zerathi cruiser. When they brought her aboard, the alien captain looked at her with something approaching awe. That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I have ever witnessed, the Zerathi said. Probably both, Lisa replied, still shaking from adrenaline. That's pretty much the human way. The battle raged for 3 days. Casualties mounted on both sides. Ships were destroyed, crews were lost, but the defensive line held. And slowly, the humans and their alien allies were learning how to fight the void more effectively. They were adapting, evolving their tactics, finding weaknesses in an enemy that seemed invincible. On the last light, Amy Rodriguez made another breakthrough. She had been studying the void creatures constantly, analyzing every bit of data the sensors could gather. Captain, I think I understand how these things work. They're not really alive. They're manifestations of the dimensional rift. They're symptoms, not the disease. Explain, Jake said, watching another wave of creatures approach on his displays. The rift is a tear between dimensions, Amy continued. The creatures are like blood from a wound. If we want to stop them permanently, we have to close the wound. We have to seal the rift. How do we do that? Jake asked. Gravitational pulses at specific frequencies, Amy said, pulling up equations on her screen. If we can generate a strong enough pulse right at the rift center, we can force it to collapse. But it requires getting very close, closer than anyone has survived so far. Jake understood immediately, because the psychic pressure near the rift is strongest there. Any alien crew would be knocked unconscious before they got close enough. But a human crew might survive long enough to complete the mission, Amy finished. It would hurt. It might cause permanent damage, but we could do it. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew, at the humans and aliens working together to save the galaxy. He thought about his daughter back on Earth, about the future she deserved. He thought about Dorath and his last words about the unexpected triumphing over the inevitable. Prepare the mission plans, Jake ordered. We're going to seal that rift, and we're going to show the galaxy what humans can do when we're backed into a corner. Admiral Patterson received the plan and approved it immediately. He knew the risks, knew that many volunteers wouldn't come back. But there was no choice. The main rift at the galactic core was still growing. If they didn't close it soon, nothing else would matter. Across the fleet, human pilots volunteered for the mission. Young pilots like Alex Carter, barely 20 years old, who had trained on simulators and never fired a real weapon in combat. Veteran pilots like Nicole Stevens, who had flown every type of ship humanity ever built. They all knew what they were signing up for. They all volunteered anyway, because that was what humans did. When the galaxy said they were too primitive, too weak, too insignificant to matter, humans proved them wrong. Not through superiority or advanced technology, but through stubborn, irrational courage, through the willingness to sacrifice everything for a galaxy that had looked down on them for years. The final assault was ready. The volunteers were briefed. The weapons were prepared, All that remained was to fly into the heart of the void itself and seal the rift or die trying. The bomber fleet assembled in a formation that would have made any military instructor weep. There was nothing elegant about it, nothing that suggested precision or order. Human ships mixed with modified alien craft, all of them carrying gravitational pulse generators that Brandon Cole had personally installed and calibrated. Each generator was a one-shot weapon, powerful enough to collapse a dimensional rift, but also powerful enough to destroy the ship carrying it if something went wrong. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his bomber, a sleek Kelthran vessel he had named Hope's End. The name had earned him some concerned looks, but Jake thought it was appropriate. They were flying toward the end of Hope or the beginning of it. Only time would tell which. "All ships, this is Morrison," Jake transmitted across the bomber fleet. "You know the mission. You know the risks. The main rift at the galactic core is our primary target. Smaller teams will handle the secondary rifts. We need to hit them all simultaneously, or the void will just adapt and open new ones." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. Amy at sensors, Brandon at engineering, both of them pale but determined. "I won't lie to you. This is going to hurt. The psychic pressure near those rifts is going to feel like your brain is being crushed. Some of us might not make it out. But we're doing this anyway because that's what humans do. We face impossible odds and we win." "Inspiring speech, Captain," Amy said with a weak smile. "Very human of you." "Let's hope the galaxy thinks so too," Jake replied. "All ships, begin your approach." The combined fleet created a corridor for the bombers, throwing everything they had at the void creatures to clear a path. Tyler Brooks commanded the escort wing, his Torvan dreadnought leading the charge. He watched human and alien ships fighting side by side, using tactics that mixed precision with chaos, logic with intuition. It was beautiful in a terrible way. "Enemy concentrations are focusing on the bomber wing," his tactical officer reported. "They know what we're trying to do." "Then we hit them harder," Tyler ordered. "All ships, maximum aggression. Make them pay for every meter of space." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Void creatures dissolved under concentrated fire only to be replaced by more pouring through the rifts. Human pilots flew their ships with reckless courage, getting closer to the entities than any alien would dare. Some ships fell silent, their crews overwhelmed by the psychic assault, but others pushed through, buying time for the bombers to reach their targets. Lisa Henderson, commanding a new destroyer after her sacrifice in the previous battle, led a squadron directly into a cluster of void creatures. "Come on, you dimensional nightmares," she muttered. "Let's dance." Her ship scattered the creatures, opening a gap in their formation. It cost her 2 ships, good people who died so others could complete the mission. Lisa memorized their names, promising herself she would remember them if she survived. Alex Carter, the young pilot who had volunteered for the bomber run, flew toward a smaller rift on the fleet's flank. His hand shook on the controls. He had trained for this, but training was nothing like the real thing. The rift loomed ahead, a tear in space that hurt to look at. His head began to pound as he approached, pressure building behind his eyes. "You can do this, Alex," his co-pilot said beside him, gritting her teeth against the pain. Just a little closer. Alex pushed through the agony. His vision blurred. Blood trickled from his nose, but he kept flying. When he was close enough, he triggered the gravitational pulse generator. The device activated with a deep thrumming sound that vibrated through the entire ship. Reality itself seemed to shudder. The rift flickered, wavered, and then collapsed inward like a wound closing. The void creatures near it shrieked soundlessly and were pulled back into their dimension. "Rift sealed," Alex gasped, pulling his ship away. Moving to secondary target. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Young pilots like Nicole Stevens, flying ships they barely understood, pushing through pain that would have killed them if their minds were any less chaotic. Veteran crews working together, humans and aliens trusting each other with their lives. One by one, the smaller rifts began to close. But the main rift at the galactic core was different. It was massive, a wound in space kilometers across. Jake Morrison flew toward it, watching it grow larger on his view screen. The psychic pressure here was overwhelming. His crew was struggling, hands pressed to their heads, fighting to stay conscious. "Captain, we're still 300 kilometers out and I can barely think," Brandon said through clenched teeth. "I don't know if we can make it." Jake felt like his skull was splitting open. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to flee, to do anything except continue toward that terrible tear in reality. But he thought about Earth. He thought about his daughter Sarah, who would grow up in a galaxy where humanity was respected if they succeeded here, or wouldn't grow up at all if they failed. He thought about all the people who had believed in him, from Admiral Patterson to Old Dorath. "We're going to make it," Jake said, not because he believed it, but because saying it helped. "Because we're human, and humans are too stubborn to know when we're beaten." He pushed the ship forward. Around him the void creatures swarmed, drawn to the main rift like moths to flame. They tried to stop his approach, but the escort ships fought them off. Tyler's dreadnought took a devastating hit protecting Jake's bomber, its shields failing and hull cracking. But Tyler held his position, buying Jake precious seconds. Inside the rift, reality broke down. Jake saw things that shouldn't exist, colors and shapes that his brain couldn't process. Time felt wrong, moving too fast and too slow simultaneously. He saw other dimensions, other universes, endless variations of what could be. The void entities were everywhere here, pressing against his mind, trying to shut him down like they had shut down so many others. But Jake's human brain, chaotic and emotional and irrational, refused to break. He held on to memories. Sarah's first steps, Amy's laugh during a quiet moment on the horizon's edge, the look of respect in Dorath's eyes when they first became friends. These memories were messy and illogical and precious, and they anchored him to reality when reality itself was falling apart. "Brandon, get ready to deploy on my mark," Jake ordered, his voice barely recognizable even to himself. "Ready, Captain?" Brandon replied, his nose bleeding freely now, his hands shaking. "Amy, confirm target coordinates." "Confirmed," Amy whispered, her eyes unfocused but still functioning. "Dead center of the rift, 200 meters." Jake brought his ship to the exact center of the dimensional tear. The pressure here was unimaginable. He could feel his consciousness starting to fracture, could sense the void trying to pull him in, but not yet. Not until the job was done. "Deploy," Jake ordered. Brandon triggered the gravitational pulse generator. The device was 10 times larger than the ones on the other bombers, designed specifically for this massive rift. It activated with a sound that Jake felt in his bones, in his soul. The rift reacted immediately, twisting and contorting as reality fought back against the invasion. The void entities shrieked. Jake could hear them now, could understand their rage and fear. They were being pulled back into their dimension, dragged away from the feast they had hoped to consume. The rift began collapsing, space folding in on itself, closing the wound between dimensions. Jake tried to pull away, but his ship wasn't responding properly. The gravitational forces were too strong, pulling everything toward the collapsing rift. "We're caught in the collapse," Amy reported, her voice strangely calm. "I don't think we can escape." For a moment, Jake accepted that. He had completed the mission. The rift was closing. Humanity and the galaxy would survive. That was enough. But then Brandon, brilliant, stubborn Brandon, laughed through the pain. "Not today," the engineer said. "I didn't work this hard just to die in a dimensional collapse." His fingers flew across his controls, rerouting all power to engines. "Shields are gone, weapons are gone, life support is at minimum, but we might have enough thrust." The Hope's End lurched forward, fighting against the gravitational pull. Centimeter by centimeter, they pulled away from the collapsing rift. Behind them, the last void entities were dragged back into their dimension, their terrible forms finally disappearing. The rift sealed completely, space healing like skin over a wound. Jake cleared the danger zone and immediately checked on his crew. Amy was unconscious but breathing. Brandon had passed out at his station. Jake himself felt like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. But they were alive. "All bombers, report status," Jake transmitted across the fleet. The responses came in slowly. Alex Carter had successfully sealed his target, but his ship was badly damaged. Nicole Stevens reported 3 successful rift closures, but mentioned that 2 of her wingmen hadn't made it. One by one, the human pilots reported in. Many had succeeded. Some had not. The casualties were high, but not as high as they had feared. And most importantly, the rifts were sealed. All of them. The void incursion was over. The galaxy took stock of what had happened. Billions were dead. Entire species were extinct. Dozens of worlds were consumed. The cost had been terrible. But the galaxy survived, and it survived because of humanity. 3 months later, Ryan Chen stood before the Galactic Assembly once more. B.